We all think we know ourselves pretty well. But what if two of the things we believe most deeply about our own kindness and about our own fears are actually just traps? Today, we're going to tear down the lies we tell ourselves, the ones that keep us predictable, controllable, and let's be honest, stuck. Let's dive in.
Seriously, just take a second and ask yourself this. When you're procrastinating on that big project, or you're holding back in a conversation, or just generally playing small, what's the fear that's really pulling the strings? And look, I bet the first answer that popped into your head was failure. Of course it was. We're all wired to avoid looking stupid, to avoid that sting of not measuring up. It's the safe, logical answer. It's what we think it is. But here's the big twist, the thing we're really going to unpack today. It's not actually failure that you're running from. It's the death of the person you are right now. You are absolutely terrified of the transformation that real success would demand of you. So, how does this fear of changing who we are actually show up in our lives? Well, it starts with how we deal with other people. And that brings us to our first big idea, the kindness trap. This is the notion that your so-called goodness has secretly become your greatest vulnerability. And this isn't some new age idea. Over 500 years ago, Machiavelli laid out a brutal truth. The world is full of people who just do not play by your rulebook. So trying to be the good guy in every single situation, especially when you're surrounded by people who aren't, well, that's not a virtue. It's a massive strategic error. And this forces us to get really honest about our own motives. That impulse you call being nice or empathetic, so often it's just fear wearing a pretty mask. It's the fear of saying no, the fear of being disliked, the fear of the awkwardness that comes from actually setting a real hard boundary. And here's what happens when you live that way. When you're always available, always agreeable, you stop being a person in their eyes. You become a utility. People don't see you, they see an emotional emergency button they can push whenever they need something and then put you right back on the shelf. You're a tool, not a presence. Okay, so if that's the trap, what's the way out? How do you protect yourself without turning into a jerk? The answer lies in this really powerful metaphor. You have to learn to be two animals at the same time. You need to be the fox with the social intelligence to see the traps before you walk into them. The fox sees beyond what people say and understands what they want. But you also have to be the lion, to be feared just enough, not through aggression, but through an assertive presence, a quiet strength that sets firm boundaries and commands respect, because everyone knows you are capable of acting. All right, so that's how we handle the threats from the outside world. But what about the saboteur that's living inside our own heads? This leads us to myth number 2, which gets right to the core of why we hold ourselves back. Let's talk about the success trap. Think of your ego, that sense of I, as a security guard for your comfort zone. It's not evil, but it is obsessed with keeping things predictable. So it builds this social mask, this persona, using familiar roles like the helpful one or the quiet one or the struggling artist, because those roles are known, they're safe. So for that security guard part of you, success is terrifying. Why? Because it means you have to drop the mask. If your whole story is built around being the one who's trying hard but struggling, then you always have an excuse for not facing the real pressure of high performance. Success isn't a reward for your ego. It's a death sentence to the character it's been playing for years. And look, this isn't just some psychological theory. There's a biological reason for all this self-sabotage. Your brain is literally wired for one thing above all else: conserving energy. It's built for survival, not for your 5-year plan. It's always looking for what scientists call cognitive ease. Chasing a huge goal is difficult and uncertain. You know what's easy? Staying right where you are. Your brain will vote for easy almost every single time. So we've got an external trap with other people and this internal prison built by our own minds. How in the world do we break free and actually start building a life on our own terms? This is what we can call the path to authentic authority. The first thing you have to get is that this is not a war. You're not trying to kill your ego. That's impossible. The goal is to change your relationship with it. You've got to go from being a hostage to its fears to becoming its calm, conscious, guiding leader. So how do we actually do that? Well, here's a really clear 3-step process. First, you have to recognize when the ego has hijacked the system, when you're doing something just to keep up an image of being nice or humble. Second, you learn to observe that feeling of fear without becoming it. Instead of thinking I'm a failure,
You practice thinking, I am noticing a feeling of failure within me. That tiny shift creates a massive amount of space. And third, you vote. You vote for your new identity with small, consistent actions. Every single time you do the hard thing, you are casting a vote for the person you are choosing to become.
So let's pull all these threads together. What does it actually mean to stop being a victim of these traps and to start being the architect of your own life?
Real, lasting strength is an inside-out job. It's not one or the other. You need the external strategy, the fox and the lion, to navigate the social world, and you need the internal alignment to master your own mind. If you only have one without the other, you're still leaving yourself wide open. Because at the end of the day, this is what it's all about: respect. It's not about being liked. It's not about being nice. It is earned. And it's earned when people, and more importantly, when you perceive that you are no longer just a passive reactor to life, but a conscious actor in it. So I'll leave you with this last thought to chew on. Who are you giving your permission to? Permission to take up your time and your energy? Permission to define your value? And maybe the most important question of all, what kind of person are you finally giving yourself permission to become? Because the answer to that changes absolutely everything.